The event is co-organized by the Embassy of Ethiopia in Brussels that graciously hosts us today in this beautiful venue, by the Belgo-Ethiopian Association, represented by myself, and by the Brussels Africa Hub, represented by myself, but also with its president, Mr. Mukhtar Ba, who will share with us a few words about the hub during the concluding remarks. We would like to warmly thank our 5 partners who have helped us promote this event. I refer to BC, Brussels Enterprises, Commerce and Industry, and especially Mr. Jean-Philippe Mergen, Director of Internationalization at BC. We'd like to thank AWEX, Wallonia Export and Investment Agency, especially Mr. Eric Leclerc for his diligent work, Director of Africa and Middle East at AWEX. We'd like to thank FIT, Flanders Investment and Trade, and especially Ms. Liz Beaches, Area Manager Africa at FIT. We'd like to thank Hub Brussels. Hub Brussels represented by Ms. Carole Monet, Area Manager Africa, and also Mr. Thomas Dupont, Head of Export at Hub Brussels. And we also like to thank Chamber of Commerce, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the ACP countries, represented by Mr. Didier Verhelst, Manager at CBL ACP. So the purpose of the event today is to contribute to the improvement of the Belgo-Ethiopian business ties by sharing different insights on doing business with Ethiopia. The current status of Belgo-Ethiopian trade is as follows, according to the latest CFEUS macroeconomic handbook, using data from the National Bank of Ethiopia. Export from, and if we take the Ethiopian fiscal year 2020-2021 as a reference, export from Ethiopia to Belgium was about 91 million US dollar, coffee representing the lion's share, followed by pulse and flowers. Belgium is the 9th overall export destination for Ethiopia. And Belgium is the 4th coffee export destination for Ethiopia. Import from Belgium to Ethiopia represented about 190 million USD for the fiscal year 2020-2021. Belgium is the 18th country of origin for import to Ethiopia. Machinery representing the lion's share, about 90 million USD, which is roughly 50% of the Belgian export, if we see that way, to Ethiopia. In terms of investment, about 20 Belgian companies are active in Ethiopia in different sectors. If we compare it to the 130 companies from the Netherlands, it shows us that there is room to grow. There is room to grow, and we can be inspired by our neighbors and their entrepreneurial spirit. As I said, we do believe that there is room for a drastic increase that can benefit Belgian and Ethiopian economies, and consequently their respective populations.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this very important session of the beginning of our new year. Of course, all of you are quite important for us, and we thank you very much in coming out in numbers. I'll try to focus on 3 important issues. The first would be on our economic endeavors, our economic aspirations. Our economic development goals are always set within a framework of 5 years. Now we are venturing into 10 years medium range strategic plan. And this plan alludes to, among others, industrialization, building on light manufacturing, increasing productivity in agriculture, reaping the low-hanging fruits from tourism, expanding mining, and then also engage in the most important sector now, as all of you would agree with me, the ICT sector. These are quite important sectors for us, among others. My second point would be about doing business in Ethiopia, which we'll be hearing a lot about today. In that, I would like to mention the most important 4 or 5 points. The first one is we always aspire to better our doing business environment. In this way, we focus a lot in improving the investment code, in improvising, the laws, regulations, and also the fiscal incentives that we can provide on a mutually beneficial way. Ethiopia is one of the largest ship owners in Africa, and we do a lot of cargo in that, and our ships go to many parts of European important, ports other than, beyond, other regions in the world. We have expanded a great deal at dry ports, and then we are focusing on clean energy. In our clean energy endeavors, we try to also minimize cost of energy and use use it effectively through the energy transition, global initiative. My third point is, and that will be my final point, this is a nation of 100 million population, 100 million plus population. It's a useful nation. It is, I would say, well-trained youth that we have because of the infrastructure that is available around us in the country. We have more than 50 universities. We have a number of technical and vocational training centers, and you'd find a very disciplined workforce. That is a very important prerequisite in investment, as you know. And we are within the framework of the recently initiated African Continental Free Trade Area. It means you'll be having the opportunity to do business with more than 1 billion population. We also enjoy quota-free, duty-free privilege with the European Union, which is called Everything But Arms. We are highly focused on green growth in Ethiopia. And this is really something that is very significant. In a way, I can mention two important things. We have managed to plant more than 24 billion seedlings in 4 years' time.
This is a fantastic country, Ethiopia, because first of all, it's a huge market, a huge potential with 110, maybe even more people, the second country in Africa in terms of inhabitants. So this is a fantastic country to come and to explore the market possibilities, the opportunities. This country is also climate-wise an interesting country. So that's why a lot of flower farmers are here in this country. Mainly Dutch people, but we have also some Flemish people here active in this country. There is a market potential, as I said. There is low labor costs. It's also interesting for doing business. The government is really convinced that they will transform the country, they change the country in order to make it as attractive as possible to do business and to do investments in Ethiopia. We have a lot of university cooperation, as you all know here. A lot of Belgian universities are active. All the Belgian universities are telling me that when they compare the Ethiopian cooperation with other cooperations, the universities of Ethiopia, the young people of Ethiopia are the smartest, are the most disciplined people. So it means this is really so fundamental also for as a basis for doing business.
Thank you all for participating in this business forum. I would also like to thank Belgio-Ethiopian business and the Ethiopian Embassy in Brussels for organizing such an important business forum. So I will be taking you through a few slides in introducing the business and investment opportunities in our priority sectors, investment incentives, and the infrastructure that we have for you to invest in Ethiopia. So as has already been said, Ethiopia is one of the largest populated countries in Africa, with a population of more than 120 million people, mostly living in rural areas. And out of this, close to 60% is in a young productive age, between the age of 14 and 29. Of course, in terms of its economic performance, Ethiopia is, of course, the fifth largest economy in Africa, with a GDP of close to $110 billion. And of course, Ethiopia still is the fast growing economy in the world. In the African context, of course, in the past couple of decades, we managed to achieve a growth rate of more than 10%. And during even COVID time, Ethiopia managed to achieve over 6% growth in the year 2020. Out of the total population, of course, close to 49% is a literate population. And as a matter of today's topic, of course, Ethiopia is one of the top investment destinations in Africa. We managed to attract big global investors, and our FDI attraction record shows that we are top, at least in the East African region, by at least, for example, attracting close to 4.3 billion USD in the year 2020-21. And of course, by the year 2022, we have a record that is more than $3.9 billion. So this shows that Ethiopia still is an attractive investment destination to consider to invest by any investor, including investors from Belgium. So to actually basically sustain the economic growth trajectory in the past couple of decades, and actually face the new regional and global economic realities, the Ethiopian government started to implement new economic reforms, basically meant to make Ethiopia and maintain Ethiopia to be one of the fast-growing nations in the world, and also making it to be the best trade and investment partner to global and domestic businesses. So the reform that has been in place since the year 2019 is meant to, of course, sustaining the growth trajectory of Ethiopia, and also facing new economic realities of the world, and also supporting the private sector investment. So as has been already said by our ambassador, the economic reform agenda introduced in the year 2019, which we call it the homegrown economic reform agenda, as an initial policy paper, introduced a reform, deep-rooted reform in three basic areas or pillars, I can say. One is the macroeconomic reform stream, and the other is structural reform, which encompasses the policy and legal reforms, and also reconsideration of sectors for investment and business to achieve better and higher economic growth. Homegrown economic reform agenda are supposed to create a kind of environment where we can create more jobs and assure inclusive economic growth and reduce poverty, and create a kind of stepping stone for achieving prosperity. So the homegrown economic reform agenda, of course, is wrapped up into a 10-year development plan, which we have started implementing as of last year. So this reform basically is led by high-level government bodies. We have a number of government structures actually leading the economic reform agenda, which includes the macroeconomic committee, which is chaired by the Prime Minister and encompasses senior economic institution leaders. And also we have the economic reform steering committee. We have also different sub-committees, which basically look after the implementation of the basic reforms introduced since the year 2019. So as to creating a conducive environment, Ethiopia has been implementing interventions in line with the World Bank economic ease of doing business reforms. So ever since 2019, we managed to reform close to 80 laws including the Ethiopian Investment Proclamation and the recent Commercial Code revision are also parts of the legal and policy reform to create a conducive investment climates. That actually includes easing starting a business and actually accessing basic infrastructure to do business in Ethiopia. And this is the initial step, and now we are embarking on the midterm and long-term agendas of creating digital systems to make Ethiopia more conducive to doing business. As such, as to my sector, the investment world, actually a number of policy items have been changed. That includes actually reforming the investment policy. We used to have an investment policy that is actually more conservative and closed one. Now, the new investment proclamation, Proclamation 1180, actually bring us to a huge departure in terms of making Ethiopia more open to private sector investment. So we have shifted our business, our investment policy from a positive listing approach into a negative listing approach. We used to invite foreign companies in only limited sectors. We call it positive listing investment law. Now we came up with an investment law which actually shows 3 investment areas to be open for the private sector. So there is nothing exclusively left for the government to work on, but only we have a sector that is reserved for joint investment with the government, and also areas where allowed for domestic investors to do business and investment, and areas where foreign investors can do business jointly with foreign investors. And the rest is open for the private sector investment, basically for indirect investors. So this is a big departure compared to the previous investment policy of Ethiopia. And as to the priority sectors, of course, Ambassador has been raising 5 of the major critical areas that we have been focusing. I will be also mentioning those 5, including the subsectors included under these 5 major priority sectors. So Ethiopia has been a hub for textile and apparel manufacturing, so we continue to promote the textile and apparel sector and an integrated textile industries to be our top priority sustain. So companies are invited to invest in joinery, spinning, garment, textile making, and manufacture garments and export to the global market. And fortunately, thanks to the industrial parks phenomena, we managed to attract global brands to source from Ethiopia. And still the textile and apparel industry is one of the top priorities for companies to consider investing in Ethiopia. Basically, out of the more than 20 industrial parks, public and private, most of them focus on textile and apparel sector, and still we have sheds and lands available for companies which consider to invest in the textile and apparel sector. And the laser manufacturing sector still, of course, is one of the priority sectors because of the huge opportunities that we have in Ethiopia. Companies are invited to do business in laser and laser manufacturing industries. Once again, we have dedicated industrial parks. Basically, 2 of the private industrial parks are exclusively focused on the laser and laser manufacturing industries. One is the George Industrial Park, which is located in Mojo town. It is a ready park for hosting companies in the laser and laser manufacturing industries. And also Hajan International Industrial Park in Addis Ababa is also ready to host investors. So laser and the laser manufacturing industries, thanks to our huge livestock, still is top in the list for companies to consider. And the pharmaceutical sector, of course, is also top in the list. Ethiopia actually aspires to be a pharmaceutical manufacturing hub, and of course Ethiopia is one of the first African countries to introduce a pharmaceutical sector strategy to basically invite foreign investors to consider investing in Ethiopia. Now the pharmaceutical sector, it has a market of more than $1 billion, and our aspiration, of course, is to bring this to a $4 billion market by the year 2030. And basically we cover our pharmaceutical needs by importing from abroad. As such, manufacturing in Ethiopia in the pharmaceutical sector biological products, vaccines, diagnostics and laboratory centers, and medical supplies. Medical equipment is a lucrative investment. Thanks to the investment by the government, we have health centers and hospitals expanding all over the country, which demands the manufacturing of pharmaceutical products more than ever before. And for that, we have a specialized industrial park in Addis Ababa. We call it Kilinto Pharmaceutical Industrial Park. This park has an area of more than 270 hectares, and it's meant for companies which are ready to manufacture pharmaceutical products and supplies and medical devices to supply for the local market, and also consider exporting to the regional market as well.
So there are a number of reforms that are meant to basically reduce bureaucratic red tapes and shorten, time that's required at different government offices, including some paper and documentary requirements. Following this is the most important thing that has been taken for the past 60 years in Ethiopia. The commercial code that Ethiopia has been adopting and implementing has been instituted at the time of the emperor some 61 years ago. And that has been revised, and it has really made a lot of amendments, and it is hoped to improve our country's readiness to access the World Trade Organization, for instance, facilitating trade and business activities. And there are around 825 sections that have been improved with our commercial code. And it really takes into account the importance of FDIs and foreign investors to the Ethiopian economy. Foreign companies, for instance, are now allowed to incorporate their businesses and operate in Ethiopia by opening an Ethiopian branch, a local branch, which is going to be legally recognized and registered as a new business entity. The Ethiopian banking sector is now going to be open for foreign competition. So the Council of Ministers have recently approved, by the beginning of September, a draft policy proclamation to liberalize the banking sector. And that could really mean a number of things. That could mean competition to Ethiopian, financial institutions, but it could as well mean, making the sector more competitive and effective and efficient in terms of, creating access to finance and related matters. Capital Market Establishment Proclamation has already been promulgated, and Ethiopia is about to join. Ethiopia has been one of, I think, the few countries in the world who didn't so far have its own stock market and securities exchange. So we are about to open our capital market very soon, and the Ethiopian Securities Exchange is going to be a reality in the months to come. And there is a comprehensive trade policy. We were short of having a trade policy that used to really guide and direct our trade and services development in the past. Now a draft trade policy is prepared. Consultations with relevant stakeholders are made, including chamber and the private sector. And we have already submitted our comments, reflections, and recommendations to the policy. And that is expected to soon be ratified by the Parliament. Among other things, this new trade policy will include important areas by way of business and trade facilitation, including the establishment of export promotion agencies and establishment of a coordinated trade facilitation arrangement are going to be amongst the byproducts of our trade policy. Privatization of state-owned enterprises is a reality now in Ethiopia. Some important and giant world-renowned companies have already started operation in Ethiopia, including, Safaricom, which is very well renowned in Africa because of its operations in the telecom industry. So these are amongst the areas where formerly state-owned monopolies are opened. Electricity is another area where the government is really initiating its endeavor to privatize partial operations of the sector. Public-private partnership proclamation has been also introduced in the country since 2018, and that has given birth to a number of initiatives. For instance, is the power generation in solar and energy production, including the transport sector, and foreign direct investment and foreign investors are welcome to join this initiative. And the directorate has been established under the Ministry of Finance to coordinate all these matters.
Yeah, Proatos in general is yes, it's a Belgian company. It's a 100 years old company. Proatos is all over the world, more than 100 countries, and one is Ethiopia. The Proatos invested here in Ethiopia in 2020, which is now almost 3 years, and it's a joint venture with the Dutch manufacturing. Dutch is a sister company of Tracon, and in Ethiopia we cover the Horn of Africa in terms of sales, meaning like Djibouti, Somaliland, the whole Somalia, and Eritrea is under our market. So Proatos is very well known. It's a B2B company. It's very well known in pastry, bakery, and chocolate ingredients. It's a B2B. We are just working only to our customers to support their customers, which is consumers. In Ethiopia, we are serving a lot of artisans. Most of our customers are artisans here in Ethiopia. The hotel chains, all of the hotel chains are our customers. Some of the supermarkets and restaurants. These are the products that we do in terms of pastry. We do cake mixes, we do custard cream mixes, the ice cream mixes, vegetable cream mixes, which is called whipping cream. We do glazes, we do cake, gels, sugar paste, baking powder, topping, and bread improvers. When you go to those pastries and the hotels, the cakes or the breads that you see as our ingredients. I would just want to share our success story and giving you the panoramic view, the bird-eye view of our success in Ethiopia. The most important attractive opportunity for Proatos to invest in Ethiopia are four. The government commitment, that's the most important thing that we want to mention. The government, through the effort of the current administration especially, has shown high level of political and economic commitment for investors.
So just a small introduction on bio and what we stand for. So also I probably a lot of you know, we are the Belgian DFI, funded 100% by the Belgian government, and our role really is towards the development of the private sector. So what Proatos was just speaking about, really helping the SMEs in those countries grow and really trickle down economics towards the overall economy. We worked always like in collaboration as much as we can with Enable, which is more working on the macro environment and on the public sector relationships. So we are kind of complementary and focusing on the private sector only. Our geographic scope is 52 countries, which have been decided by the Belgian government. And but we invest with the main share of our investments are in Africa, 50%, about 25% in LATAM, and 25% in Asia. So moving on to our activities in Ethiopia itself, and what I am here to present. So our main investment really is Oscales, which is a fund centered on the SME SMEs, quite agnostic, investing in a lot of different industries, but really an experience in manufacturing. And but before that, we had an investment in geothermal facility through our fund, Africa Renewable Energy Fund. And then we have another investment through Ethos in 2018. Then in 2020, we invested in Ascent, the second fund of the manager, which already has quite a number of successful investments in Ethiopia. But the second fund at the moment has not yet invested in Ethiopia. So we expect it to be happening quite soon, probably by the end of the year. They will disclose their first investment, I expect. And ultimately, they will invest 20 to 30% of their portfolio in Ethiopia.
Some few points about Ethiopian Airlines operation in Benelux in general. We have generally, totally, we have 52 flights per week out of Benelux. The major part is the cargo operation. We basically connect, Liège is our hub, next to Addis. In Europe, other than Addis, basically, the biggest operation we have is in Belgium. We practically connect eastern part of the world, the eastern hemisphere to Europe, and then as well as some flights from the Americas, the South and North Americas to Belgium. Belgium is our hub. So whenever you want to connect, you want to ship anything from Europe to China, we have 4 or 5 flights a day. To sub-Saharan Africans, we have 3 flights a day with this beautiful aircraft, the 777-800. We uplift 500 to 800 tons of cargo out of Belgium and to Belgium every single day. So I'm proud to say that we are the biggest operator of cargo to sub-Saharan Africa and to China, even from Europe. So wherever anything you want to move, we are here. And also we have a passenger flight daily to Addis. We connect to 54 African destinations every day.
When you consider the lingering effects of COVID and other things, I think Ethiopia has starting to regain its what I call its groove, and sort of the reforms that we talked about. So in summary, for the Belgians in the audience and others online, I think it's certainly Ethiopia, depending on the sectors that you're looking for, would be one of the more attractive countries to invest, and we speak from experience. So financial services is now open. So if there are Belgian companies, European banks, Belgian financial institutions, in particular the banking sector, I think it's now open. It's a question of choosing the right partner. Our understanding, based on some initial indication from the government, up to 40% foreign banks can own buy shares in Ethiopian banks up to 40%. My view is eventually there will be a roadmap for them also to be majority owners. The final comment, something we've talked about in the past also, what investors were asking us, do you have a capital market? Well, I guess that's also being answered. And my guess is by Q1, latest Q2 2024, the Ethiopian Securities Exchange, ESX, will be launched. That means it will provide a deep pool of capital for European investor, Belgian investor, and others, and also, of course, for Ethiopian companies to create significant capitalization for their domestic as well as global expansion. Final point, which I think was mentioned, maybe I overlooked it, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Large economies, large populations like Ethiopia with an industrial base who can export from here. Foreign companies, Belgian companies, now have a billion plus market. The world's largest free trade now is in Africa, and Ethiopia is a signatory to the Africa Continental Free Trade. That's a big plus, which I think will add to the attractiveness of the Ethiopian market.
We ask ourselves as European Africans, what can we contribute in let's say, the sustainable development of the African continent and the European continent as well? Because, I mean, we are on both sides of the Atlantic. So the Brussels Africa Hub ambition is to build the right ecosystem here in Brussels in order to be able to channel investment toward Africa, but also return generated in Africa to bring it back to the investor base in Brussels. So that's very important to take into account. It's not one way, but it's a two-way street. That's what we are about Brussels, Africa. Ethiopia is a key country for us as from the diaspora. Why? Because the headquarters of the African Union is in Addis. The headquarters of the European Union is in Brussels. So we chose really to keep, let's say, to put our emphasis and our focus to those two parts of the world. We are looking at the entire African continent, and we are looking to the entire European continent. So we are European, Euro-Africa focused, let's say, people, and who really believe investment is the future for the African continent and for the European continent as well.